can't believe this. I can't tell you anything. Every time I tell you something, everybody else knows about it. No, I'm mad.
What is up, everybody? It's Brandon coming at you live once again from Smith's Grove, and today I'm going to be covering Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, released in 2009 and written and directed by, you guessed it, Rob Zombie. And I'll be covering the unrated version in this one instead of the theatrical cut because I like it just a little bit more for a couple reasons I'll get into a little bit later. So after 2007's remake of Halloween left Rob Zombie exhausted, he originally wanted no part in making a sequel. We know this because Rob's used about every opportunity since to bitch about the production on both films.
Like kind of psychotic meddling. Like my phone was ringing all the time when I'm on set working.
A demented individual, I think. And it wasn't any easier than the first one.
It's good to purge it. You'll feel
chaos.
better.
I mean, it was just...
Producer Malek Akkad would instead turn to French filmmakers Julien Maury and Alexandre Bastillo to direct the sequel in a more traditional way. Akkad, however, ended up feeling that there was something lost in translation with the French duo and was eventually able to get Rob back for a sequel after he had a year to cool his jets. In doing so, he told Zombie to ignore the traditional rules of the franchise as he was no longer bound by said rules. The reins were now off and he could feel free to do whatever. And good lord did he ever. The focus of the movie's story would center around Laurie now dealing with severe PTSD, even more so in the director's cut than the theatrical cut, as well as her connection with Myers and the idea that they share some similar psychological issues. The violence and nudity is also ramped up a bit more, if you can believe it, coming from a Rob Zombie movie. Cast-wise, we get a whole new slew of supporting actors, several of which are Rob Zombie's reoccurring band of misfits, as well as the previous film's principal stars returning one last time. The exception here, of course, is actor Daeg Faerch, who was replaced by a new kid actor for the role of young Michael, since Daeg had already grown quite a bit since the first one. You know, as kids tend to do. Filming for Halloween 2 began in February of 2009 in and around Atlanta, Georgia, so that the company could take advantage of certain tax breaks. Zombie admitted later that Georgia was also used because some of the other locations originally chosen were still experiencing snowy weather. With a budget of $15 million, Halloween 2 opened in August of 2009 and grossed a total of $39.4 million at the box office. Reception of the film was overwhelmingly bad, with most people criticizing things like Loomis's character development, poor editing, the music video-like imagery, and the pretentious hallucinations of Deborah Myers, young Michael, and that white horse. And don't fool yourselves, that shit was whack. How whack? Well, if Malek Akkad was here right now, I'd rub his nose in it like a dog just so he could see what he's done. Luckily for him, he's not here. So instead, we're going to take a look inside the Sanitarium in Halloween 2, and I'm going to rub your noses in it. The movie opens with a fake quote from a fake book called The Subconscious Psychosis of Dreams, written by Robert himself, defining what a white horse means, so right away we can fully acknowledge the motif that Mr. Zombie is displaying throughout this movie and why it's about to be the most pretentious Halloween we've seen so far. We then get a flashback scene with the new Little Michael actor talking to his mother Deborah at Smith's Grove. She gives him a white horse and he tells her it reminds him of a dream he had where Deborah is also a white ghost-like figure. We then cut to the title card and the sound of a gunshot complete with screams from the end of the first movie, and Laurie, having just shot Michael, is walking down the road in a trance, and I can't blame her too much. She has just been through some shit. Brackett finds her as she starts to snap out of it, and we cut immediately to her being wheeled down the hall of the hospital in a complete panic. She then goes into emergency surgery, and there is no shortage of graphic imagery here. Ew. Across town, they load up the meat wagon with one of the bodies being Michael. On their way, we get a glimpse of how creepy these two jackoffs are.
I heard a story about a couple of meat wagon boys fucking corpses. I ain't never had the urge till tonight.
What the f***, dude?
I would never do it.
Yeah, sure, okay buddy. In the middle of this crazy talk, Karma rears its ugly head in the shape of a random cow that they plow into. Poor cow. That thing is fucked. Also fucked are the two coroners. The driver, Hooks, is completely dead, but Gary is clinging to life still, although I don't know how. Well, with the coroners and the van now out of commission,
You know what time it is.
it's time for Michael Myers to spring back into action. In order to help poor Gary out, Michael finds a piece of glass from the wreckage and puts Gary out of his misery by sawing his head off. Well, I mentioned that this film was going to be the most pretentious so far that you've seen. It's also going to be the goriest you've seen so far. And in order to drive this shit into your skulls over and over again, Michael will be traveling on foot for a spell along with his ghost mom and her white horse. Back at the hospital, Laurie's shown waking up from her surgery and finds Annie in pretty rough shape, but still alive. A nurse played by Octavia Spencer tells Laurie she needs to get some rest and helps her back towards her room before getting called away over the PA. She doesn't stay away though because Michael's found his way to the party.
I can make things out of clay and lay by the bay, I just may. What do you say?
After a slash to the face, Nurse Octavia collapses to the floor as Laurie gimps off as fast as she can. Michael then proceeds to stab the nurse in an absolute brutal way, stabbing her repeatedly while grunting like an ogre. Like, that seemed really angry and personal, Mikey. Did she make you try a slice of her pie?
I said, eat my shit.
After a nice short chase scene reminiscent to the OG Halloween 2, but not as cool, Laurie finds her way outside during a rainstorm and into a security station normally manned by Buddy the Night Watch, who's no stranger to helping people.
I'm only doing all of this because I heard that Buffalo Bob guy shoved a road flare up your bunghole.
What?
Buddy quotes Bob Marley and tells Laurie everything's gonna be alright. But everything isn't gonna be alright, Buddy, because Michael is there to stop you from driving Laurie away to safety. I'm not the biggest Marley fan either, Mikey, but you could have been a lot nicer to poor Buddy. Damn. As Michael draws his axe and swings at Laurie, she wakes up in bed. So yeah, it was just a dream. I mean, I don't believe all of it was, just the Michael scenes. Laurie heads into the bathroom to remind herself he's dead, and we find out it's 2 years later. In the theatrical cut, though, it's only 1 year, and I don't really know why they changed that here. I guess maybe to showcase where Annie and Laurie were in their recovery, or lack thereof, better? I don't know, it doesn't matter. We find out Laurie is now living with the Brackets, which is a welcome addition as Brad Dourif and Daniel Harris are some of the strongest reasons to even watch this heaping pile of a movie. At the table, Annie tries to tell Laurie to take one day at a time, and depending on which version you're watching, you might get a different direction for Laurie's character. In the theatrical version, she seems a little bit more healed and a little more likable. It's only as the movie progresses that she starts to slip more and more. In the director's cut, however, she pulls no punches and is not coping well at all.
Fucking time. I mean, she just fucking sits there and her fucking...
Annie's character, though, seems to be a little bit stronger and over time seems a little less sympathetic. I mean, she did go through some shit too and almost died. But I guess since this is a story about the deep-rooted mental issues of the Myers family, plain and simply put, they're all wackadoos, Annie and her character development is going to take a shit for a little while so we can be introduced to Laurie's newer friends that are there so Laurie isn't constantly reminded of the past. I mean, I'm also pretty sure they're just there for cheap cannon fodder. We also get introduced to Laurie's psychiatrist, played by the late Margot Kidder, as Laurie has her daily therapy session. A Rorschach on the wall draws Laurie's attention, and we get to hear more about how Rob Zombie shoehorned a stupid white horse into its subplot.
So what do you see?
White horse?
Jesus, this is stupid. By the way, I think the symbolism of the white horse actually stands for more positive shit to come in your future. It represents things like hope, strength, courage, and none of those things are in this movie. Oh no. Even Dr. Loomis has somehow gotten worse to the point of being a total intolerable asshole.
Are you a clam digger or something? I don't mean that in the lesbian sense.
During a press event for his new book, he gets asked about the possibility of Michael being alive since they never produced a body, and it's enough to drive this new petulant Loomis into a fit of rage where he swears to the people that Michael's dead. Sure, Loomis, if Michael is dead, then how come he's walking across the fields right now? No, really, why in the f*** is he walking across the fields of Georgia right now? Where has he been for the last 2 years? And why is it taking him this long to walk back to Haddonfield? He couldn't have been that far away to begin with. Maybe the ghost of Deborah Myers can answer since Rob shoehorned the character in again so his wife could be in it.
We are counting on you to bring us home this year.
So that's a no then. Okay, well I guess let's move past this weird shit and get to some kills. After Michael gets caught trespassing by a couple of rednecks with an antler truck, they do what anyone should do when they catch a trespasser and beat the living shit out of them. It turns out badly for them, of course, because Michael gets right back up, puts his mask on, and proceeds to brutally kill the rednecks. Even poor Jaslyn, who is actually nice to Michael. I notice he's grunting a lot more in this one too. I never did like that. Oh yeah, and he kills and eats that dog too, because why not? Meanwhile, it's dinner time at the Brackett house, and after Laurie gets sick, it's Annie to the rescue again to comfort her. She does apologize to Annie this time for being a bitch earlier to her, so that's awful nice of her. We then get another dream sequence with Laurie on a dinner table and a bunch of black and white stylistic shots that only Rob Zombie can pull off like he's filming another music video. Like, what are those things? What the fuck is this? Anyway, Laurie wakes up from her MTV dream and we get another title card telling us it's Halloween Eve. At the Myers house, which is a different house than in the last one because, you know, it's Georgia, Loomis is getting ready for an interview while still being an absolute dick to his publicist.
When I want your opinion, I'll beat it out of you.
While warming up the shower, Laurie is having fantasies, and this time we get a recreation of Laurie tying up Annie like Michael did to Ronnie in the first one and slitting her throat. Once this happens, we get more Rob Zombie music video style shots, including that fast speed shit he likes to do, and Laurie saying fuck a lot. Oh, and Sherry Moon's there too. It wouldn't be a music video without her, am I right? Laurie explains this horrible episode to Lois Lane at her therapy session, while also seeming a bit frazzled by her ability to feel happy about festivities going on in town. When the former writer of the Daily Planet won't write her a prescription for some good drugs, Laurie flips her shit. And having worked in a pharmacy, I can confirm this to be a normal response.
You're more fucked up than I am, you crazy bitch.
You know what isn't normal? How long this big bastard has been walking across random people's property. That night, Sheriff Brackett watches Loomis's interview on TV as Loomis throws Haddonfield PD under the bus over the handling of Myers. Upstairs, Laurie and Annie get into a shouting match again after Laurie's attitude gets worse and Annie calls her out for drinking in her condition. I'm not gonna lie, she's just as annoying as Ronnie is at this point. I know she's been through some shit, but damn. Annie isn't impressed either, and she reminds her that she's not the only one that's had her life turned upside down. Out at Deborah's old stomping grounds, Rabbit and Red owner Big Lou is admiring himself on TV for playing Frankenstein's monster at the town's festivities earlier that day. Fun fact here, his employee Howard is played by Jeff Daniel Phillips, who would go on to play in more of Rob's films, including the role of Herman Munster in his zombified remake of The Munsters in 2022. After Big Lou and his main squeeze Misty tell Howard to take out the trash, Howard gets his head smashed in by Michael, who's apparently not happy about that wall display of his live mom. Inside, his ghost mom, however, tells him once again, it's time to bring them home. I really don't know what all that means, Deborah, but should little ghost kids be in a strip club? Actually, instead of making another joke here of some kind, what the fuck is this kid even here for? Like representing a piece of what died inside of Michael years ago or something? You know what? Don't tell me, because I refuse to care. Whatever it may be, it's probably nonsense.
And I'm tired of pretending it's not.
Anyway, before Mikey leaves, he disrupts Big Lou and Misty's sexcapades in Lou's office, chokeslamming Lou and snapping his arm all gross-like. He finishes Lou off by smashing his head into the wall and does the same with Misty, although hers was much more drawn out. I know this was probably a good way to get some more nudity in the film, even though we get some more later, and I'm not complaining one bit, but it does give me more work during editing, so I'm gonna keep this one simple. The next morning, Brackett is in his office reading Loomis's new book and starts beating his fist on the desk in anger because Loomis chose to reveal the big secret of Laurie being the little sister of Michael. Little too soap opera for my taste, but whatever works for you, Brad. Brackett calls his house to try and warn Laurie about the reveal, but she's unfortunately about to find out for herself, because she's already in town. And Rob really loves to tear down his characters in these movies. If they aren't already complete piece of shit human beings, he'll make sure all the bad things that could happen to them happen at the most inconvenient times.
I hope all the bad things in life happen to you and nobody else but you.
Great. Now Laurie can face all this new information without a stable support system, so she can fall further into despair. Thanks, Rob. In town, Loomis's book signing was off to a good start until Linda's father shows up to blame Loomis for her death.
No. Butchered her.
No, dude. I mean, he strangled her, but it was nowhere near as bad as some. Holy shit, dude. Take it easy. While Loomis is busy making more enemies, Laurie is reading about her lineage. Good lord, can anybody read a book in this movie without a tantrum? I don't like it either, but damn. You see, this is what happens when you force accelerated reading on people. Well, Laurie uses this opportunity to bail on Annie and protest at Brackett knowing the whole time so she can find emotional support with the people who don't know shit about fuck. Loomis heads to promote his book on a talk show hosted by Chris Hardwick, with the secondary guest being Weird Al for some reason. Meanwhile, the magical barrier of Haddonfield seems to have lifted for Halloween night because Michael has made it back in time for trick-or-treating. With Annie all alone at home, the other girls head to the Halloween party where a bunch of more naked chicks are dancing to some local psychobilly rock band. Good way to take your mind off shit for a little while, I guess. While Jeff Daniel Phillips, who's pulling double duty in this movie as Seymour Coffins, is up on stage cracking really bad jokes, Harley's about to get her freak on with a wolfman in a van. It's cut short, however, when the wolfman hikes his leg at a nearby tree and gets stabbed by Michael. He busts into the van and strangles poor Harley to death in slow motion. I just realized that I care as much about Harley as almost everyone else in this movie. As in, not at all. One person I do care about, though, is Danielle Harris's character Annie, who's taken kind of a back seat despite her dealing with her own shit. Unfortunately, she's about to meet her end this time. I feel like she doesn't deserve this shit again, and to be honest, if Laurie was just gonna be this fucked up over everything without Annie having a major role, then why not just kill her in the first one like it was supposed to be anyway? She's been homebound this whole time, and Laurie has done nothing but fight with her. Despite it not making any sense, just like the rest of this goofy movie, we do get one of the strongest scenes yet when Annie's body is found by Laurie in the bathroom with blood absolutely everywhere. Michael has fatally wounded Annie, and in an emotional scene between the OGs, Annie dies in Laurie's arms. She barely gets any time to grieve, however, when Michael starts to bust the door down. Laurie manages to escape into the countryside with Michael in pursuit. Meanwhile, Brackett and police arrive to discover Annie, and we get another good emotional scene here with Brackett. It seems like a bit much at first, but he's literally so grief-stricken that he can't form words, so I'll allow it. Laurie makes it onto a road nearby after a little walk in the woods and flags down a dude in the car that looks an awful lot like the kind of guy that folds maps instead of rolling them.
I didn't fold the map. Roll the maps.
Michael makes quick work of him and rolls the car off the road with Laurie still inside, knocking her out in the process. As the car sets fire, he carries her to a nearby shack. And I have to mention here that Rob Zombie's stupid ass had the nerve to not only include Ghost Deborah and Little Michael in this scene, but also had a car explode in the background as they walked away from it like they were Arnold Schwarzenegger. What the Conveniently enough, there was also somehow a witness to this incident, so Brackett and the police, along with news choppers and eventually Dr. Loomis, are surrounding the old shack. Inside, Laurie comes to and apparently can see Deborah now as well. She's even somehow being held down by little Ghost Michael. This has turned into one unbelievable mess of a hostage movie now for some reason. Loomis sneaks off towards the shack in a noble attempt to find redemption for his transgressions, but in doing so gets attacked by Michael. In the theatrical cut, he gets cut up and killed pretty bad by Michael, but in the director's cut, everything goes deathly quiet as they crash through the wall and out onto the ground. Michael picks Loomis up and takes his mask off before screaming die and stabbing Loomis in the gut one time. Loomis then collapses and police open fire on Michael, killing him for good. The theatrical cut actually sees Laurie stabbing Michael to death before being placed into a sanitarium with visions of her ghost mom and that damn white horse. In the director's cut, she comes out and grabs Michael's knife and stands over Loomis. One of the trigger-happy cops jumps the gun, however, causing the rest to open fire on her, killing her as well. The last shots of the movie show a top-down view at the dead principal characters, and then the White Room scene as Nan Vernon's cover of Love Hurts plays and we cut to black. And that was Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, released in 2009 and directed by him. I'm assuming that Loomis dies at the end of this version as well, even though it's not as obvious, and I'm assuming that Rob keeping that White Room scene at the end is just Laurie's last visions before she leaves this world. And honestly, it's probably better for her character that she did go in this version. Between both versions, I feel like this is definitely the better cut of the two. If you're gonna have a wild and pretty much shitty movie, don't half-ass it. The runtime for this version is way too long as well, but I feel like most of it's needed to tell this kind of story, unlike the first movie where it was just mostly filler. Much like the first one, the characters were mostly unlikable in this movie, and especially in the director's cut. I even mostly detested Laurie in this movie. Laurie is understandably fucked up, but more often than not, I felt like Annie did and was like, oh my god, get over yourself. I get that this movie did have some realism to it as far as PTSD and all that, but I do feel like it was a bit exaggerated at times. Like literally everything that could go wrong for Laurie did. I did really like Danielle Harris and Brad Dourif in this though, and not surprisingly, they had the best scenes in the movie. Scout and Danielle's last scene together, as well as Brad Dourif's scene in reaction to Annie's death, were really emotional and also done very well. I also really liked the hospital sequence at the beginning too, even though most of it was a dream. The last good thing that I can say is the kills were pretty brutal. I definitely felt the anger throughout the movie, but I don't like the way he grunted all the time. To no one's surprise, Mike cons do far outweigh the pros in this one though. The story is a pretentious mess, just like I mentioned before. The characters absolutely suck. The editing was bad, and Rob Zombie's style just really didn't work for this one. Especially the wacky, sped up scenes and the music video edits. There just wasn't a lot of fun here, and I mean, I know trauma can be a serious thing, but it doesn't all have to be bad, even in a so-called slasher film. And lastly, Michael yelling die and grunting was just not needed, and neither was that stupid little car explosion at the end. For all of that nonsense, I'm giving Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 a 2 out of 5. And part of me feels like that's too nice, but Brad, Danielle, and Scout all did a really good job with what they had to work with, so I'm giving them that one. If you actually choose to watch this one, both the theatrical and the director's cut have their ups and downs. If you're looking for a slightly happier Laurie and a shorter runtime, then stick to the theatrical version. If you want the sobby shit show for all of its non-glory, then go the director's cut. It's a downer for sure, but I think it's what he really meant for it to be, and if you want your Rob Zombie fix, that's it. To be honest, I'm kind of questioning my sanity right now, just trying to tell you guys which turd smells better. Anyway, all that changes next time, because after a 9-year hiatus, we get a new reboot and a comeback that no one expected. That's right, next time on Smith's Grove, I'll be covering 2018's Halloween, which is a sequel just to the 1978 classic. And I've got plenty to say about that one. So until then, thank you guys for watching, and stay sane.